Hi everybody. Okay, in this video we're going to be having a look at some interpretations of the Treaty of Versailles in the form of cartoons. Now cartoons play quite a big part in this paper. Question 1 is normally a cartoon. The source states how do you know, and then there's normally one cartoon and one written source in question 3. So we're going to be having a look at cartoons, talking a little bit about what to look for in cartoons and how to read them. I'm going to show you, I think, 3 English cartoons, English interpretations of the Treaty of Versailles, and 2 from the German perspective, so that we can see them from both sides. So if we just have a look then, I've just written on them already where they're from, so we'll have a look at them in more detail. Now, when you look at cartoons, something that you can do straight away is have a look to see if you can recognize who's in them. I think one of my top tips for looking at cartoons would be look at as many as you can, because what you'll see is a theme around who's in them normally, depending on what subject they are. So in Treaty of Versailles ones, you'll normally get the big 3 or the big 4. Always read the caption, try to understand it, learn the background of the people, learn the nicknames, that kind of thing. They're often drawn in the same way as by cartoonists, so just keep having a look at them and see if you can recognize who the people are, because there will be nothing worse than you getting in that exam, looking at the cartoon and thinking, I have no idea who that's meant to be, because they aren't labeled with people. You will have to just recognize who they are and who everybody is meant to be in the cartoon. So you will get given the provenance of it. You will be told where it was published, who drew it or wrote it, and when. You'll get the date. I've not included all that on this because we aren't answering an exam question on this. We're just looking at the content of it. So what I always check when my students do a mock exam or an exam question is I look for their annotations, because I know time is tight on these exams, which you could argue with there's not really any point in, because as a historian you won't be given a time frame to analyze things in, but you do have a certain amount of time, and I get that obviously the writing is the important bit, but taking time to read the source to understand it is going to make your answer better. So don't just glance at it and go straight onto your answer. Really take some time to circle things, to write down what you know about it, and give your brain time to process it. Okay, so if we have a look in this, it says here allies, indemnity, demands, and then so what this is the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, but it's talking about the money element of it. So remember our land, army, money blame, and it's called the reckoning, and it says pan-German, monstrous I call it, why it's fully, a quarter of what we should have made them pay. What we should have made them pay if we'd won. Okay, so what it's saying is, if the Germans had won, the Allies would have had to pay 3 times as much. Okay, so that's what it's saying. And what you would need to do in a question about this is think about, well, is that true? Is there anything that you can think of when you to back that up? And what you would look at there is the treaty in 1917 that the Germans imposed on Russia. Okay, and the reparations there, the Germans were really, really harsh on Russia when they left the war in 1917, and that's the evidence that cartoonists and people use to back up what they're saying when they say, look, we might have been harsh on them, but they would have been much more harsh on us, and we've got evidence for it because look at what they did to Russia. Okay, so what you're looking for is what is in it, what is it actually showing you, and what historical information have you got that agrees or disagrees with what this source is saying, plus why are they saying it. Okay, what this cartoon is doing is defending the terms of the treaty. Okay, it's saying actually it definitely is justified. Okay, this is pro Treaty of Versailles, because it's saying if it was the other way around, they would have been more harsh on us, so it is fair. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, this is a German cartoon. Now, this is a completely different message. Now, again, straight away when you can see this, you can think about what is it showing us, first of all, right? This is a starving German person. Now, straight away, what you need to be thinking of is, what is your contextual knowledge? What is going on here? This is the Allies who are taking Germany's possessions from them. Okay, so again, to bring in our contextual knowledge, when we're talking about the Allies taking Germany's possessions, what are they taking? They're taking their land, right? So you wouldn't just write in an answer, because we're aiming for those top marks. You're not just going to write this source represents the Allies taking all of Germany's stuff, right? Because that's not going to get you any marks. You've got to be specific. So think about what you know. What did the Allies take from Germany? They took 10% of their land, right? So you can use that as a really good example. Better still, if you can give a specific piece of land that Germany had taken from them and given to someone else. So for example, and if you've got another example, that is absolutely fine, the Saar coal fields, which were given to France. Okay, so that's a really nice bit of information. You could also have the 132 billion gold marks that were taken from Germany. All right, and why is this making the German people starve? Again, you can come back to the coal fields. You can come back to how do they build up their industry without the coal fields? You can talk about hyperinflation. Okay, and how could the Germans possibly have enough for money? Have enough money for food if they were paying this back in all this money back? They also had lost all their industry, and they're going through hyperinflation at the same time. How is all of this going to happen? Okay, and that all of this is directly because of the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. So this is obviously, if we're looking at what's pro and against, this is against the Treaty of Versailles, and we know that because of this starving. And the reason it's not a starving man is to make it more sympathetic, right? This is a starving woman, and that's to make you feel even more sorry for the German people. And then this is a man driving away with all of her stuff and leaving her, obviously not even with something to clothe her. Okay, so she is obviously in distress, and that's a direct result of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, so the next one, provenance is on this one for you. So this is the Daily Express in London on the 7th of May 1919, and we've got here the big four. It says it down here, so have a look like this. Some of them are easier than others in terms of they'll give you more in what they say. Now this one, you don't really get anything written, but you can read a lot from it, but only if you've got that contextual knowledge in the back of your mind. You can't rely on a cartoon to tell you things. They'll trigger memories, but you've got to get your revision in there as well. So this one has a lot more written on it, and it says the big four, so you know who these are already, but if you know which faces to look at, so for example, here, you can see Clemenceau here. Oh, sorry, that's Lloyd George. That's Clemenceau there. That's Italy there, and that's Woodrow Wilson. And you can just tell, because I've seen loads of these cartoons, when you've seen them over and over again, you know who they are. So I wouldn't need that written down there for me to know that this was the big four. I could just look at their faces, which is important because, like I said, in cartoons such as this one, when you don't get any writing, you need to know what you're looking at. So peace terms, you've got to swallow it whether you like it or not. So they're being force-fed these peace terms. Now, contextual knowledge here, Germany was not invited to the Treaty of Versailles, right? They weren't involved in the peace conference at all. They were just told to turn up and given the peace terms, and they had to sign it, right? So they were forced to sign it and accept it. And that was absolutely horrendous in Germany. Some of the people who were sent to sign the Treaty of Versailles were killed when they got back to Germany. So we've got here the people who were forcing it on them. So the British Empire, France, America, Italy, and Japan, who all become the leaders of the, well, apart from America, become the leaders of the League of Nations. So for or against this cartoon, this is against the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, I'm going to come back to this cartoon and I'm going to talk about how to answer an exam question for this cartoon in the next video. So I'm not going to spend much more time on it now. Now, what I absolutely love reading students' exams. I did last year. One of my students wrote an exam question on this, and they actually realised, which I'd never noticed before, that on the bottom of the shoe is the outline of Germany. So it's as if Germany has been stepped on and crushed, which I just thought was an absolutely beautiful thing to notice. I'd never noticed that in this cartoon before. So they're being squeezed, mouth open, they're being force-fed the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. So it's against it because it seems like it is unfair. Okay. Okay, next one. Now, this man is George Clemenceau. Now, you need to know that. You would know that that was George Clemenceau. And what this is doing is this is showing Clemenceau, who is ripping up Wilson's 14 points. Okay, so he's ripping up Wilson's 14 points here. Now, if you watch the, I think it was the first video I did on the Treaty of Versailles, we talked about Wilson's 14 points. And Wilson, now again, your contextual knowledge coming in here, Wilson, his 14 points were about, his 14 points were about international cooperation, and maintaining peace. Okay, so that's Wilson's ideas. Clemenceau's ideas, we summed it up in 2 words, one of which was revenge. Okay, he wants revenge on Germany. He doesn't necessarily want international cooperation. He does want to maintain peace, but he wants to do it in a way, he wants to crush Germany, basically. So Clemenceau, there's another really good cartoon that I've not got up here, but it's Clemenceau and he's dreaming of the treaty of the Paris Peace Conference, and it's him just talking to all versions of himself, because his ideal would be that everybody was on the same page as him and they'd just be all have the same ideas. Wilson and Clemenceau don't agree. And this is a German cartoon, which is saying, look, this is obviously a lot better. Clemenceau obviously has it in for us. So again, this is against the Treaty of Versailles, because if they'd gone with Wilson's 14 points, it would have been much more lenient towards Germany. This is the last one we're going to have a look at in this video, and this is an English cartoon published in the Daily Herald. And this one says, peace and future cannon fodder. Now, again, you've got to get yourself familiar with the kind of language that's used in political cartoons. So if you don't know what cannon fodder is, it's basically like men that are sent into war just to be killed. Okay, so peace and future cannon fodder. Now, again, we've got our recognisable characters in here. We've got Woodrow Wilson, we've got the leader of Italy, we've got the leader of France, and we've got the leader of England. Okay, now, peace treaty on the floor here, and the tiger. Now, you need to know who the tiger is. The tiger is Clemenceau, the leader of France. So the tiger, that's his nickname. Curious, I seem to hear a child weeping. Okay, 1940 class. Now, this cartoon has got a lot of foresight. It's kind of like The Simpsons. The Simpsons seem to be able to predict everything. This cartoon seems to be able to predict what's going to happen in the future. Now, we know that both Lloyd George of England and Woodrow Wilson did not like the Treaty of Versailles. They thought in its entirety, they thought it was too harsh because they predicted that in 20 years' time, it would cause a future war because it was too harsh on Germany. And that is what this cartoon is saying. It's saying that this person, 1940, is going to be future cannon fodder because in 1940, they will have been so upset with the Treaty of Versailles, there will be another war, more cannon fodder, and it will have been because of what was happening in the Paris Peace Conference. So again, contextual knowledge to back that up. You can talk about the blame clause. You can talk about 10% of their land being taken away. Are they going to want that back? The reparations. Okay, so cartoons are an absolute blessing. I really like this paper because I think the chance to look at cartoons and to be able to analyze them and marry that with your contextual knowledge is really, really good. I just think it's a really good opportunity for you. What the shame is that you've only got 5 minutes in question 1 to read and analyze the cartoon and write your answer, which is why it's so important that you're well practiced at looking at cartoons. So really do try and get your hands on as many of them as you can. There's absolutely loads of them on Google. If you go in the Punch archives, the Punch cartoon archives, and you have a look at their World War I cartoons, really get to know the characters in them and just have a go at thinking, right, what can I see in this and how does it relate to my contextual knowledge? It's really, really good revision because then you can think, right, this is what this is showing me. Now I'll go and read my textbook or read my revision guide or whatever and find what I can and note it down. And that's a really nice way to revise and practice your interpretation skills at the same time. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. As I said, in the next video, I'm going to look at one of the 4-mark exam questions, the first question on this paper, and have a look at one of the cartoons that we've already seen. Okay, so hopefully you'll join me in that video. I hope this has been useful for you, and I'll see you in the next one.